Hi, everybody. Next, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Gustav Malin, who's coming to us all the way from Sweden today. And thanks so much for staying up late. I know it's well after hours for you, Gustav. Gustav is the CEO of Svebio, the Swedish Bioenergy Association. He was also past president of Bioenergy Europe from 2010 to 2016. And is considered one of the foremost leaders on bioenergy in Sweden and indeed in all of Europe. Most of Svebio's 300 members are active in producing and providing biofuels or using biofuels on a larger scale. Members also include manufacturers and providers of burning equipment, machinery for collection and processing of biofuels, consultants, scientists, politicians, as well as some private members. And Gustav holds a Master of Science degree. So Gustav, over to you.
Thank you very much, Gordon. It's good to be on a Canadian conference. Actually, it's my first time at a Canadian conference. I have spoken several times at the Canadian Embassy in Stockholm, but never been to a Canadian conference. So it's good to be here, and I'm happy to hear such good speakers before me. Really good. And also I congratulate Canada to go into this sector, because I believe you have great benefits to reach here in the bioenergy sector, especially for heating, since bioenergy is most competitive in the heating sector. And as Jamie said earlier, there is a lot of energy in the heating sector. Yeah, Gordon, you mentioned our 300 members. There are some logos there, but I don't go into that. But the Swedish Bioenergy Association is an interest association, then, so we have all kinds of members from the whole sector, both buyers and sellers and producers of equipment and so on. And we work with transportation fuels, electricity, and of course heat. We started with heat. And we founded the World Bioenergy Association in 2008, and the association is still in our office. Not now, since they have working from home, since everyone is working from home, not only at 8:30 in the evening. I'm alone. I'm sometimes alone in the days as well, since I am living rather close to the office. I used to go here anyway. This is a slide. Jamie talked also about that we have more than doubled the bioenergy use since 1990. During the same time, carbon emissions has decreased by 29% in Sweden, and the economy has been growing by 75%, gross domestic product. So it has been a good development for us. We have no domestic fossil fuels. That's why it was not difficult to decide in the 80s and so on to focus more on domestic fuels of wood than on imported oil. It was mainly imported oil at that time that we have in our energy mix. But today it looks like this. The energy use of Sweden, almost 39% is bioenergy. We have a lot of nuclear and hydro, which is electricity. And as Jamie said earlier, also electricity is usually a smaller part of the energy consumption. In Sweden, it's about 140 terawatt hours. That's about 40 or 35%. So it's a little higher share than normal, and that's because of that we have huge amounts of hydro and also built a lot of nuclear in 75 to the 80. And that's why we have cheap electricity, and that's why electricity is also used for heating a lot. Bioenergy surpassed fossil oil in 2009. Then they both were like 28% of the energy use. So we have been growing every year. The share of renewable energy in total energy in all the European countries from 2017. Then, so Sweden has, in all heating, we have 69% renewables. Well, and of course, that's mainly bioenergy, even though there is heat pumps also. And most of our electricity is renewable. We have almost no fossil electricity. It's about 60-65% or even a little more that is renewable from hydro and wind and bioenergy, and then the rest is nuclear. And then if it's not windy at all and very cold, we can import some fossil electricity. The reason why we have expanded the bioenergy sector so much and quick is we had an environmental fee investigation in the 80s, and they concluded that we should have NOx fees, we should have sulfur fees, and we should have a carbon dioxide tax. So the tax was introduced in 1991, and first the proposal was that both the industry and the households should have 25 euros per ton as a tax. But then the industry that compete on an international market protested, so they got only 7 euros to start with, and the household got 25. So the red curve here is the tax level for the households, and the green curve is the tax curve for the industry, but that is today the industry outside of the European trading scheme that trade emission rights. So we had, I think, 3 changes that was a bit bigger of the level of the tax, and at every change we lowered other taxes. So we didn't increase the total tax for the population, and it was usually the income tax that was reduced when the carbon tax was increased. Another thing to note here is that it's from 2011 and forward that the industry outside the emission trading scheme, breweries and food industry and so on, got the higher tax. And they also have the highest carbon tax in the world at the moment, on around 115, 120 euros per carbon dioxide ton. And they didn't very much protest to have this high tax. And there are several reasons behind that they didn't find this as a problem. It's one is that they really would like to become fossil free, and it's a marketing issue, good on the market to say that you're fossil free, so you can sell fossil free candy or fossil free beer or whatever. So that's one part. But the other part is that bioenergy today is not expensive. I mean, the wood chip cost compared to fossil oil is about 40%, and the pellet cost compared to fossil oil on the world market price is usually 70-80% of the oil price. And then also, of course, we don't have natural gas that sometimes is lower, when it's difficult for the natural gas seller to sell the gas, they can always lower the price because they don't have any use for it otherwise if they don't sell. So they are always a difficult competitor. But the sum up is that the carbon tax has been instrumental to make this shift that we have done over the years. So in 1980, we had this consumption of oil, 275 terawatt hours, and the bioenergy use was 48. So we were very much the same as any other country. In the 70s, we had 85% fossils, and a very small part of renewables. And in 2018, it was the other way around almost. Now I would like to talk a bit about carbon depth and carbon dioxide on the globe and so on. So this is global data, global carbon project. Every year we have emissions of carbon dioxide, mainly from fossils and cement production, but also some from changed land use and deforestation. And on the sink side, so those are the sources. And on the sink side, we have the atmosphere increasing every, or 46% of the carbon emissions end up there. We have the sea where 23% end up. And we have the biomass where 31% end up in new biomass. And this is a 10-year average. But this is actually the similar situation for the last 30, 40 years. And it's interesting to notice then that biomass, you got 17, 18% of all biomass is new. If you take the deforestation away from the new biomass, it's still 17% plus. So in 5, 6 years, we have so much new biomass, so it would be enough to cover the whole energy use on the globe. That's very theoretical, of course, but I believe it's doable to change from fossils to only biomass, but it's not needed because we have so many other kinds of renewables. But it's good to have that in mind. And if we go down on a more local level, for Sweden, this is a slide on statistics on the current Swedish forest for the last 100 years. The blue bars is the standing stock of stems. It has increased from 1.8 billion cubic meters to 3.4 billion cubic meters. And here you can see the annual growth is the green curve going up a bit because the forest is growing better and better due to forest management and improved plantings and so on. And then the red curve, sorry, the red curve is the growth, the annual growth, and the green curve is the annual fellings. And in 2005, we had a hurricane called Gudrun. So that's why 75 million cubes fall in one night. And you can see this is the annual harvest then on the green side. So 75 million cubes falling in one night was a lot compared to the annual harvest, so to say. So that's why that figure was a lot higher. But over the years, the forest volume has increased a lot. If we look on 1 year, this is from the Swedish statistics produced in an IRENA report also that you could read if you like. The annual growth of the Swedish forest 2015 was 436 terawatt hours, because this is, I mean, the 120 million cubic meters translated into energy, and then it becomes 436 terawatt hours instead on the productive forest land. One part, about 25%, we don't harvest. It's a stock increase. And then we harvest stem wood on 181 terawatt hours. That is used of the industry. And then we get some branches and tops and some stumps. Currently, it's mainly the stem wood that is used of the industry then. 167 goes to the forest industry. And some of that stem wood is rotten or infected by bark beetles or something like that. So that's why that goes to energy immediately. And of the branches and tops, we'd use about 10 for energy, and 55 is decomposing, and the carbon dioxide goes up into the atmosphere. And all the stumps also are not used. And Svebio, our association, we say that of those 138 unused terawatt hours, we could use about 60 sustainably. Maybe 20-25% of the stumps and the part of the slash as well. Okay, this is a bit complicated, but this is the same things but you have the harvested volume on this side, but we also have included some conservation protected forest is also here. But if you look at pulpwood, for example, timber. This is stem wood, the green part here. And then you have pulpwood going to the pulp industry, you have timber going to the sawmills, and you have some stems going to the stock increase, and also some firewood going directly for energy use. All the orange and red lines here are for energy, and the yellow one is products, and the blue ones are for decomposition. So you can study this later if you like, but it's very interesting to see that the pulp mill industry, for example, use a lot of their own industry or energy. Today, 96% of the energy supply in the forest industry is renewable or bioenergy. So there is almost no fossil energy used in the forest sector. And I believe that's one of the reasons why the Swedish forest industry are so competitive. They only have their own energy supply, and they are net sellers of energy, both of electricity and of chips and heat. So we are able to use waste from or byproducts from the ordinary forest industry to supply almost the whole society with the bioenergy that we use. And when we harvest a tree, around 50% of the tree of the volume becomes energy. So it's not a problem that we harvest more or for the energy use, and we never harvest for only energy use. So if we harvest more, we get more energy to sell. Jamie tried to explain this with carbon neutrality. And I would like to say that I usually, when I talk about carbon neutrality, I talk about how we discuss in biology. When we do science, we study either the individual or the population. And if you study the individual and carbon neutrality, you would look upon the tree. And obviously the tree has to grow before burning. That's like common sense or farmer sense, as we say in Sweden. So a tree, the individual, is always carbon positive. If we look on the forest, this is like a forest and the circulation of plantation and harvest. We could say that this is 100 years. The first year you plant and then it grows and you thin it in different stages, and then the 100 year you harvest. So 1 year you harvest, but all the other 99 plots, they grow every year. So on a landscape level, on national level, sometimes on a farm level, you are carbon positive because those 99 plots grow a lot more than the one that you harvest. Similar explanation, same explanation as Jamie had earlier, but in a picture. I would like to mention this Joint Research Center report, which is the European Research Center that came in January, and it was immediately hijacked by World Wildlife Fund Brussels and also the European Academy of Science Advisory Council, so the Science Board or Science Council of Europe. And they claimed the day after the publication of this report that bioenergy is worse than fossil coal when burning. But actually, I recommend you to read the report because it do say that bioenergy is complex, but there are plenty of options with sustainable bioenergy if you do it the right way. So of course you could do it the right way if you harvest more than the growth is and so on. So we need the sustainability criteria that we also have in place. It's a law in Europe that we need to follow those criteria that make it sustainable. And also if Canadian suppliers would like to sell to Europe, you would also need to comply with those rules. But this is a big problem that we have, that the environmental associations work very much against bioenergy. And me being a biologist and being also very interested in environmental issues in all my life, I find that very strange. I should go back actually to a slide here. I would like to show you this one. Sweden was here, but in the other end you have Netherlands. The Netherlands last year they were on 8% renewables and 92% of fossils. And then I could go back to this slide because the Netherlands have very strong NGOs and they are very much against bioenergy. And I think the result of that is that the fossil industry is very happy because in the Netherlands, as you could see, I mean, they still have 92% fossils and didn't at all reach their target. I think the target was 14%. So they had to buy emission rights from Denmark. And of course, it's possible to say that you find very bad stories, but there are thousands or even more stories that are good around bioenergy. And usually, actually, the one that they claim is bad is, in my view, not so bad. But it's always about how you do it. And we need traffic rules. And of course, you know, if we don't have traffic rules and everyone should drive like they want to and wouldn't follow the rules, we would have chaos. And of course, it would be similar in our sector. And I use also to mention banks. We think banks are good and we should have banks, but sometimes they do money laundering. And that's an issue, a problem. And then we give them fees and maybe we should put some people to jail or so. But we shouldn't stop banks because the benefit of having banks is still better. And it's the same thing with bioenergy. The main message is that it's very good in most situations, and we need to look out for not doing the bad thing. Okay. Jamie also mentioned about district heating. We have more than 500 nets of district heating. And I would like to mention some spectacular or other types of new technology. Terence showed the picture of Vinke boiler. Vinke bought a company called Petrobio, who is selling multi-fuel wood burners. There are other companies also, Becotech, selling soon a multi-fuel powder burner that is in a container where you have the pellets and the burner and a 15 megawatt burner in the same container. So it's very easy to get. This slide shows you that the current normal pellets price is about 140 euros per ton, and the market price of oil last week was about 170 euros per ton. So that's a very interesting kind of technology. I would like to mention the possibility to use organic ranking cycle as well. We have a company called Againity where you can put this kind of machine together with a district heating or a heat producer. You just put in hot water here, and on the other side you use the cold side. So if you get the proper delta between the hot side and the cold side, then you can produce 5 to 15% of electricity just by adding 5 to 15% of additional fuel as well. So that's very interesting. As I mentioned, the carbon tax has been very high for the industry lately outside the emission trading scheme. So that's why Swedish companies also have been very good in setting up equipment that can produce steam for industry. So we have done that in laundry, in breweries, in asphalt production. It's also renewable today using pellets or bio oil, in food processing as well. And then last, I would like to mention that we have set up together with the Baltpool, a Lithuanian governmental company, a digital trading place where we now can buy and sell pellets and wood chips. And it's actually possible to sell over ships as well during with this. I know both Stockholm Exergy and Ørsted will use this kind of equipment to buy volumes in the future. And I believe also it's possible to start and buy in Canada if you would like. We have the Bioenergy International magazine if you would like to follow what's happening in the bioenergy sector on a global level. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Gustav, for that inside look at bioenergy in Sweden. We have time for a few questions here. First off, has bioenergy caused a decline in biodiversity in Sweden at all?
A decline in biodiversity? No. Actually, we have, or the forest data doesn't show that. We have this red list that is increasing all the time, but that's due to that we are finding more species. And in 1993, we had a law about leaving dead wood in the forest. So today we have more than double the leaving of dead wood compared to in the early 90s. And I also saw a study the other day where they said that in 2010 they made an investigation of all the birds in the Swedish forests, and there were 3 species they couldn't find in 2020, which they found in 2010. But on the other hand, it was 10 species that they found 2020, which they couldn't find in 2010. So you can't see any real change or so. Birds are moving around, so it's not easy to find them always. And a lot of birds are not staying in Sweden all the time. But we can't see that. There is a lot of claims that there is extinction of species and so on, but that we can't see that. There is no data on that. We had actually 2 butterflies that they mentioned that they can't find in Sweden at the moment, but they are both from meadowland. And that's a problem with that we don't have cattle out in the landscape eating and so on, because that kind of meadowland is not there, the bushes and so on, it's the same, because cattle production is difficult in so to say. So I think all the biodiversity issues is in other areas than in the forest area.
Okay, one last question. How did you achieve a high degree of public understanding of the benefits of biomass in Sweden? Here in Canada, people are fairly uninformed about it.
I think we have more issues today because also the Swedes are influenced by the international discussion, and also a lot of young people. I mean, if you're 35 or younger, a lot of people are grown up in the cities, and they are fed with bad information. And also the NGOs are very good in communication and also producing a lot of bad data and not listening to good data. I mean, like they continue to claim that 20% of the emissions are from deforestation, but that was in the 80s. But they continue to say that year after year, and they don't talk about all the new biomass, as I mentioned earlier. That is like a new information that the biomass is growing more and more, and that the globe is getting greener and greener. And that has been going on for 40 years. That, the Clintwood or Clint Eastwood areas where he was riding along with a cactus standing by his side, they are not there anymore, really, those areas, because there is a lot of trees around those cactus nowadays. So there is deforestation, but mainly in Brazil and Indonesia, and not so much in any other countries.